I'm going to go ahead and get started. So thank you all for being here. I have no idea how this is going to go. I'm assuming you'll all be very well behaved, so we won't have too many people talking over each other. But I just want to try this and see how it works. So for those of you who are not familiar with me, I am the author of several books, including Managed Services in a Month. I built and sold a couple of managed service businesses in Sacramento, California. And I am interested in trying to figure out how we can do more things to build more community and share more resources in our community. One of the things that I've noticed on Facebook in the last year, it's really been dramatic, is there's all kinds of groups starting up that I'd never heard of before. And some of them put on conferences that I've never heard of. And some of them, like there's one that they're announcing their 4th annual conference. And I literally hadn't heard of them until this year. So I'm trying to figure out how we bring some of these folks back together. You know, this community sort of started with Harry Brailsford traveling around the country like Johnny Appleseed and, you know, meeting with groups 10 and 15 at a time and saying, you know, when I leave town, I want you to keep meeting. And so a lot of what we know as the SMB community came out of that and the various user groups in North America, England, and Australia. So I don't necessarily want to go back and do all that. That seems like far too much work for me. But we do have tools like this, and we have other things that we can do. So there are a few of us who are in different masterminds together. And so I want to kind of use a bit of that format. Today, I'd appreciate it if people just understand that just mute yourself. I think all of you have, or we'd be hearing a lot of chatter. And just unmute yourself whenever you want to interrupt, ask a question, or say anything. Because this is not a webinar tool. There's no Q&A or chat feature. I could have used the webinar tool for this, but I wanted to get the display of whatever it is, 25 or 30 people, and let people participate as part of a community. This is public and it is being recorded, so just know that if you participate, it may be rebroadcast. So don't say, oh, I was just about to fire this client, ABC company. We don't need to hear that. Okay. So, and if you want to use a fake name, I don't care. So here's what I want to do. The mastermind format that I've used with several groups is basically that several people participate and then they, one at a time, have an ask. And it might be that my ask is, how do I do some marketing materials, or I want to come up with a new offering for my clients, but I don't know exactly which services to include, that kind of stuff. It could be anything. And then one by one, go through the entire group. Usually it's not like this. It's certainly not a group of 25. It's normally, 5 or maybe as many as 10, but normally it's a much smaller group. So today I'm going to start with my ask. I just want some feedback on an idea. And then I want to see if anybody else has any other asks. One of the things that I'm always working on is trying to figure out, what does this community need? And I see Dave Seibert here. I don't see everybody who's on, but since Dave's on my screen, I'll call him out. There are people like Dave who, and Harry, to be honest, are constantly coming up with new things and saying, I'm going to try this. And sometimes it flies and sometimes it doesn't fly. And so sometimes you make money and sometimes you lose money. And if it doesn't fly, you quietly walk away and pretend like nothing happened. Right? So, I do that all the time. And so sometimes I'll announce something and then nothing comes of it. And, one of the problems is that when you ask people what they want, they sort of feel obligated to answer your question. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the information you get is accurate. And I'll give you a very good example. I asked people a couple of years ago whether they wanted more audiobooks, and overwhelmingly, like 75% said, yes, absolutely, I will buy everything you put out. And so I proceeded to hire somebody to create audiobooks from, I think, 7 or 8 of my books, and spent over $6,000 having audiobooks made. And guess what? Exactly one of them sells. The rest, they're all on Audible, I never did do service agreements because I think it's irresponsible to be reading legal language while you're driving down the street, because people will fall asleep and die. So, but, managed services in a month is the only one that ever sells. So, it's an example of, that sometimes you get this feedback and it's not necessarily accurate. But anyway, it's always worth trying to figure out what does the community want. And so I thought maybe if we had a back and forth instead of a survey, we would get a better sense of that. So here's my ask in terms of what I would like to get some feedback on. I have a massive amount of material that I've created over the years. And every once in a while, I'll meet somebody who says, I own everything you've ever done. And I assure you, nobody owns everything. Nobody has bought everything I've done, because I've literally recorded hundreds of audio programs and hundreds and hundreds of webinars and all kinds of other stuff. And so what I want to do is I'm thinking about putting together a site where people can access all of that. And it would be on a subscription. And it would be basically a subscription to everything I've ever produced. And the power of it, I think, is that there would be an index. So you could put in the index backups, and you would find every chapter that I'd ever written that discussed backups, every audio program that was ever recorded, every webinar that was ever done, anything I'd ever done on backups. And so some of that is already available for free to the universe. And so you could just link right to it and go there. But other stuff is for sale. And so if you join the membership program, then you would get those things in addition to the stuff that's already free. So that's kind of the general idea. And the power of it is the index. And I'll be very, very honest. At this point, this is an idea. I'm talking to my web guy, Ruben, but we haven't written a line of code, and there is absolutely nothing currently in the works except just thinking about it. So the idea would be to have different levels. So the first level is obviously free. Second level would be cheap. And by cheap, I mean something in the neighborhood of $50, $60, $70 a month. And again, that would be for everything that I've ever produced. And so that's a lot of stuff. Sorry, I woke up with a cough this morning. So the goal there is that there's probably, I don't know, $3,000 worth of stuff for sale in my store, but you're going to consume it at a pace that makes sense for you. So, I'm basically asking for a 1-year commitment. And so for a few $100s, you get everything at a massive, massive discount. But the goal is to then get you to the next level, which is where it would be a little bit more per month. And there would be interactive forums that people could participate in. And there would be online events that are only available to members and stuff like that. So, we could have contests about what are your marketing ideas. We can have contests about how do you develop things for your clients. We could have collaborations where we say, let's put together, a group online where we say, let's develop a presentation that we can give to clients and prospects. And then each of the people in the group can go do it in their city. Things like that. And basically, I use this tool, Zoom, to have meetings on a regular basis with my brothers, my mastermind groups, lots of different people. And it's a good tool for this. But I think there's other good tools out there. And I think that there's lots and lots of stuff we could do. And the fourth level would be something where I would include all of our live classes. So for those of you who are unaware, over at Great Little Seminar, I've got about, I think there are 15 classes this year. 13 of them are unique. And so they're $259 each. But what we do is sell a subscription so that as an add-on to this, that only for maybe $200 a month, you could take every class that's offered. So again, it's one of those three-tiered things where the savings grow and grow and grow. So that's the idea. But I have absolutely no idea whether I would get 6 people to sign up or 60 people to sign up. And so what I'd like to, get some sense of from you is, does this make sense? Is this worthwhile? Should I put the effort into it? Because clearly building this will not be free. So, there will be some effort and it will take some time. So first question is this worth pursuing? Second question, what do you think of it? And then the third question is, should we have vendors be involved at some level, whether it's just to watch or to participate and create their own forums and so forth? I am open to any feedback. Howie raised his hand, so I don't know what to do with that, Howie, except you can unmute your microphone and begin speaking.
Hi. Were you going to do this anyway to organize your...
I don't know how let's see here. There we go.
He actually started speaking. I think you just have to let him speak.
Okay. All right, Howie, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. You're super, super low volume, but we'll give it a shot.
Sorry. Were you going to do this anyway for your own purposes?
Would I do this myself for my own purposes?
Yeah.
I don't think so, because I've got a store. If I didn't do this, what I'd probably do is spend the same amount of effort fine-tuning that store, making it easier to, browse around and so forth and so on.
Hey, Carl.
Yeah.
I think it might be overly complicated with 4 levels. I think 2 or 3 probably makes sense. And I'm not sure that $50 or $60 a month would be perceived by the community as cheap. I understand it's the cheapest option, but there might be some way to break it out. I know you like to kind of top load these things, so you drive folks towards choosing the top price level as you talk about in your managed services plans. I think you could help by dropping that bottom level a little bit and raising the higher levels and maybe limiting it to 3 options.
Well, in terms of the 3 versus 4, what I'd probably do, because the 4th is like all of the classes. So what I probably do is 3 levels and then have the classes as like an add-on you can buy, but only if you're a member, right? Like it's just basically a subscription product, but it's only open to members. In terms of the low end, one of the problems is if you went and bought each of my books, just the books, it would far exceed the annual cost of what I'm pricing that entry level at.
I'm probably more Carl read than most folks in the community. I think I've read 10 books, and probably if I started from scratch, there's about 8 that would make up my library nowadays. And I think you might want to think that there aren't that many people who are going to buy 30 works or even 20, and maybe think about pricing as a subscription a reasonable percentage of 8 or 10 that others might buy. At least in my experience.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I really do want to, my idea was to try to have it be something that is basically all you can eat, which is a term I never use in managed services. But in this, everybody needs something different. And there are people who just need entry-level resources. And there are people who just want contracts, So you would still be able to buy it all separately. I'm not eliminating my store. And I had thought about, a lot of people already own a lot of stuff. That is absolutely true. So not sure how low I can go and make it worth my while. That's the problem.
That's always the problem.
So, JR, you have a comment or question?
Thanks. The $50 to $70 really didn't strike me as not cheap at all. I mean, that seemed like a pretty good price range as far as what I was thinking whenever you said that for everything you're offering. And I would certainly be willing to do that and would want to do that. My question is that when you say all the content you've ever created, specifically like the checklists, there's a lot of checklists that you created when you owned an MSP. I mean, are you talking everything you've ever created?
I will continue to take those things out of long-term storage and put them into circulation, and so they will go into this site. Also, one of the things that we've never really done is, there's a huge project to take basically the second half of the network migration workbook and break that 200-page checklist into a series of checklists, because there's a section that's 100% SQL, there's a section that's 100% email, and so that's literally a project that's been on the back burner for 10 years. So stuff like that, I think we would do. And the other thing is, one of the promises would be that I'm going to write another book, right? So if you're a member, you just automatically get it for free or for no additional charge.
It certainly seemed reasonable to me. I mean, that would be something that I'd be interested in.
All righty. Thank you, sir. Other comments or questions? By the way, we have 35 people on, so I'm very grateful for that.
I do have another question, Carl.
Yes, sir.
So is there going to be a cross discount? So if members of this group that aren't at the top tier that automatically get everything, is a group member going to get a discount on your publications? And not that I'm looking for that, but maybe that would be a way to offer more value to each of those tiers.
Yeah, I think what we do is basically create an internal store. So if you're at one level, but you want to buy something that's not included in your level, you would get it at a discount. So
thanks.
Membership has its privileges, as you know. So
indeed.
Anyone else?
You're sorry. Real quick, you talked about the vendors being allowed. I don't know, how would you include them? I don't see how adding them in there under the same way that you're going to be in there. I mean, are you talking about having vendors come in and provide checklists or what?
Well, so part of it would be that's up to them. I can imagine having a forum where this is where vendors will hold a training where they say, what do you guys want? And if everybody says what we want is what's the best way to set up users in the PSA? They say, okay, well, let's go train you up on that and have it be very interactive, and something different than the canned webinar format that is so prevalent. Also, if you've got the space, vendors will be able to put up all kinds of materials and say, yeah, there's our checklist, there's our if you're putting up a BDR, there's the information you need to know about insurance, or there's the information you need to know about a service agreement or whatever. It could be a place where they would add their own resources as well. Because a lot of vendors, Intel has a partner site, HP has a partner site, Microsoft has a partner site, but 90% of our vendors don't have a partner site where you can go get all the juicy resources. And I guess my bigger question, JR, would be, do you want vendors to read through the forums and see how people are talking about them, or would you not want vendors to be accessing that?
What I wouldn't want would be vendors selling.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, so clearly their presence is there to be educational, not to be selling. So, and that would be, for some vendors, there'd be some training involved in that.
Yeah, and I don't know whether having them look through your forums for how they're being talked about, I don't know whether I'd like that or not. I kind of like the idea of having a place to talk about vendors with other resellers and other service providers, where we're free to say anything we want to about vendors and not worried about whether they're going to see it.
Right.
But I do like that first idea you talked about, where having vendors, if they say StorageCraft or Datto, anybody were to create a training webinar or a training session specifically for your community that was maybe a little bit more in depth, because your community is going to be more technically astute than a typical community. So,
well, I would like to believe that. The other thing is we could have a forum that's for entry-level eFolder users and a forum that's for advanced-level eFolder users. And so what they want from a vendor would be very different, because one is literally like, how do I set it up? And the other one is like, okay, so I've got all of these complex systems. How do I do whatever, So I think those conversations are different.
Darrell, George Hefter.
George.
How are you?
Very good. Nice to see you.
How about, have you given any thought to maybe opening it up to MVPs, for example, not to take anything away from your inestimable knowledge, but having a variety of opinions on a subject, like, for example, including Jeff Middleton or somebody like that, it would seem like it might be a worthwhile addition to a forum such as you contemplate.
So, well, I would certainly love the MVPs, the Microsoft MVPs, to participate. So, I mean, and many of them are my best friends. So I would be very happy to have them participate. A lot of them, this is what's interesting. A lot of them are the ones they're the people who also built the community. They've got their groups that they run, and they've got groups that they, participate in and so forth. So now Jeff doesn't, but, if we could get him out of retirement to participate here once in a while, I would be honored to have him. So.
Okay, just a thought.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Yeah, Carl, can you go back to the slides of the different levels that you have?
Oh, yeah, of course I can, because this is America.
And as far as the question about whether vendors can see what's going on or look at what's being said, I don't know how you'd even be able to moderate that. Like saying basically, like if you're a vendor, you can't join. I mean, that would literally, I don't know how you'd be able to do that kind of thing.
Well, what I do is I'd have a level that's a vendor level, and if the group says vendors can't access a forum, then they can't access the forum. That's manageable.
Oh, okay, yeah. As long as you've assigned moderators and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah. I mean, in a perfect world, it would be great to have people who wanted to be moderators about a topic, who came in and said, I want to moderate the forum on culture, for example. I know somebody who might be interested in that, or moderate the forum on BDRs or whatever, or security,
right.
HIPAA or whatever.
So, I guess the hard part I have when I think about this is, ASCII has, I guess, probably one of the more, I see a lot of activity in ASCII forums. I don't know, has CompTIA got a forum system that they have? Does CompTIA got anything like that going?
I do not know.
I know, Autotask has their intro. ConnectWise has theirs. But as far as community type forums, I think ASCII is probably one of the most prominent. I don't know who else is doing that kind of thing.
Right.
So I would think that you can create your own niche for this, but it would have to certainly be very narrow, that it's, or, certainly agnostic, and then focused, that there's a purpose for it, so that people, because you want it to become the all thing of where people go to get answers for this if they can't find it, if they're for their PSA tool or their RMM tool or the online for whatever. I think that's one of the things you're going up against is ASCII, I guess, at the end of the day.
Right.
What you have to be able to differentiate what you're doing from ASCII to get people, because right off, I mean, because it's combined with all the other stuff that you've got laid here, doesn't mean people will use the forums. Like you could find that a lot of people sign up for all this, but at the end of the day, they just need the content. They want access to the stuff so they can get to whatever they need to.
It may be that at that level, a lot of people don't care about the forums and nobody uses them, but what they do want is, either contests or, getting together with groups and creating marketing materials or whatever. So that's possible. I will say I love ASCII. I'm a huge fan. I just attended their conference. But their forums, they are pretty good at limiting what they want people saying on those forums. And I would not be doing that. The interesting thing is probably the most open, unregulated forum that I know of is Reddit. And the overlap, the Venn diagram of, overlap between what's on Reddit and what our community needs is not very big. So, I do think we need a place where people can, say what they want to say. And, that's why I brought up the question of vendors is it may be useful to have a place where they, at least some of the forums, they don't get to join.
Hey, Carl, this is Josh. I'm a member of that forum, and ASCII, of course, use it a lot. They do restrict vendor membership, although some folks are both a member and a vendor, and it's kind of a gray area. But they sure don't filter much content. So I'm not sure what you were referring to there.
Oh, just several times people have said, I posted this and was told on the side, don't do that again.
Oh, that leads me to believe that I'm well behaved. That can't be right. I don't know. I haven't run into that myself yet or heard of other folks. I didn't realize that.
So that's just my impression. I have not been shut up in any ASCII forums. So,
Josh, you're not the rogue you used to be.
Okay, good point.
Then the thing I think of, Carl, is Josh, by the way, Lieberman had mentioned to me more than a year ago this idea, which I thought was awesome, but I haven't had time to take action on it. And we haven't furthered it where you literally have a rating, like literally if you're going to do this and you want the people to participate in the forum, imagine a catalog of the vendors where people can come in and rate that vendor or their product and their experience, and almost like you're not selling the products, but they've kind of almost like what do you call it? What's the little app that everybody uses to rate restaurants and stuff like that?
No, Yelp.
Yelp is
not really Yelp the way it's laid out, because it's not good. But I mean, where somebody can say, hey, here's what here's the things I like about a product or I don't like about it, maybe list its prime features and functions. Let a vendor claim it and make sure that their description of what they do and don't do is listed there properly, so that people can go out and see, wow, there are actually 18 different PSAs out there that are sizable for my realm. And that's all they get to do. They can claim it, they can buy ads on your space or whatever, but people who have used Autotask can say, hey, I liked it, but I had to move because whatever. Anyway, that kind of thing that Josh and I were talking about was, basically because there's 85, how many do you have in your list, Josh? Like 80 some vendors or primary products in a specific category that when people go, who are they? What do they do? And they need a better translation of it rather than going to their website and see that it's this nebulous company that does stuff. Yeah, I get that you're a PSA, but where does this fit into the scheme of things? And let the community feed that content.
There's a little over 100 of them, Manny, in 14 categories, I think. Yeah. It's kind of like an ecosystem for the whole MSP IT provider.
Right. And we've almost gotten sidetracked on the forums. I mean, I do think that that could be useful, but it certainly wouldn't be the only reason that you would buy into, the paid level, So, all right. So I appreciate everybody's feedback. I wanted this to be a community meeting, so I would love to hear on other stuff. Do you have needs? Is there something in this community that you would say, what this community needs is a good 10-cent, haircut or whatever. What don't we have in this community that would make it a more cohesive, more useful, make us all more money. What's missing that we don't have?
Carl, can you hear me?
Yes, barely, but I'll turn it up.
Cool. Should I talk louder?
I got you.
Okay, cool. Thanks. My input first of all is thanks for doing this community online live thing. This is cool. I would bring up a topic that's kind of one notch higher than what we're talking about at the moment, and that is just getting we have some great leaders in the community that we have, and they do a lot to help the community. And I mean, just off the top of my head, I mean, people, Kevin Royalty, Amy Babachek, Susan Bradley, Steve Banks, Wayne Small, you guys. There's a lot of good names that do some really good stuff. And I think that what the higher level topic is the community helping support and get behind those that are bringing value to the community itself. And sometimes, as you kind of made reference in the beginning, some of us are out there trying new ideas and bringing new value, and sometimes it's a bit of a challenge to get those that are the receivers of that value to participate, engage, and get involved. And so I would kind of like the people that are on the online call right now, those are the people that are more engaged because they're here. But there's a lot of people that are not here. And I kind of like to know from the people that are here why they think that there's so many not here. Meaning, why is the community not engaged when we do these things? Because they really gain a lot of value, and we are putting energy in to make these things possible. And I'd love to see more people in the community prosper. So maybe a little insight on why others are not diving in and what your thoughts are.
Well, I would love to have some of the folks online here respond to that. Part of why some people don't participate is they're trying to run a business. I had a really interesting insight last year. I talked to a friend of mine who gives and gives and gives and gives in the community. But he said, he literally was like almost apologizing to me. And he said, I just want to let you know why I don't buy more stuff from you. He said, I'm a one-man shop and I can only work on one thing at a time. So I get enough out of the weekly videos that I don't need to buy a book a month. And I don't need to take a class and so forth as well. And I realized, that there's this legitimate layer that if you can only work at one thing at a time, that is totally cool. And you got to do what you got to do. And some people are happy to be at that layer. And so, we can't say, oh, you should participate more to people who can't. In my coaching, and you probably know this from your coaching, there are people that can't actually work on the stuff that you ask them to work on.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree with you. And for each person that is a one-person company, equally there's other companies that are multi-people in the company.
Right.
So I think that there's a whole group out there of multiple sizes, and
Sure.
and I totally get it. But I would think that those that are larger than one could probably consume a little bit better.
Right.
And those that are one are consuming to the level that makes good sense for them.
Well, and I'm looking down on the names here, and I recognize many, many names.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people here who are in the, $1 million range, $2 million range, and I'm grateful that they're here. So, I know that they haven't all been lured away by, there's so many groups now in our community where they only want the people who have already made it to 1 or 2 or 5 million. So it's nice to know that there are folks who are still willing to participate in stuff like that, and they are here. So, like I say, if we can build a tool that people want to participate in, that will add some value to the community.
Dave, this is Ken. Dave, I think one of the things to answer your question, frankly, is for many years we had a common thread that drew us all together, and that common thread was blown up and destroyed. And so we haven't found a replacement common thread yet. There's been quite a splintering. And I think if we can figure out something that is common that would give us that ability to draw us all together again, it would go a long way. You know, you and Carl have brought out some very good additional points as well. And Carl, I'm sorry, but I ended up joining a few minutes late. So if there's a pause and you have a chance to repeat the context of that slide you were showing, I'd love to hear.
Okay. So for those who are joining late, my ask is that I'm looking at the possibility of creating a membership type site where I put up all of the content that I've ever created. And as I create new content, I add it to the site as well. It'll have an index where you can put in a keyword term and, price lists or whatever, and find every reference to that term in every video, every webinar, every book, every white paper that I've ever produced. And then the stuff that's free, you would get access to immediately, and the stuff that's for pay, obviously you'd be encouraged to join and be a paid member. So the first level would be free. The second level would be, and I just threw out numbers, $50, $60, $70 a month, would get you access to everything that I've ever produced. And then a third level would be to actually participate in an online system where there would be live events and forums and contests and other things that would go on. And then we had some discussion about whether it makes sense to have a fourth level or to just have the live classes as a cheaper subscription beyond that. So that's kind of the basis of what we were chatting about.
Got it. Thanks.
So, but Ken, you're a perfect example of somebody that has your pulse on at least what everybody's doing in the Portland area. And, if there are other ways that we can engage people, I think you're one of the few people who still has a working user group. So, and some of the others who are on this call as well, to be honest.
And actually a few of our members are on the call.
Yes. So, other folks, anybody else have a question about, hey, how come our community doesn't do this, or why don't we do that? Or, again, I'm just open to new ideas. I'm trying to figure out how we can get our feet going forward.
So,
I want to back up. Go ahead.
Well, the comment a moment ago about a common denominator, I think that was a reference to Small Business Server. Correct me if I'm wrong, but waiting. Okay, so that's what it was.
Yeah.
All right. So.
Yeah. Yes, I'm sorry, Josh.
Oh, it's okay. Thanks. So there isn't that kind of unifying product anymore, but there are unifying trends and unifying service delivery methodologies, such as, how's your MSP-ness on a scale of 0 to 100 or something like that. I knew I'd get to say that someday. What would be a unifying thread in the absence of that product?
Well, I would say it's the Cloud 5-pack. I'm very serious, because to me, when I look at SBS, Manuel used to work in my company, ran it for several years. What we did with SBS from basically 2003 till 2008 was we took essentially 95% the exact same project and did it again and again and again and again and again, and got better and better and better and more profitable every single time. And in my opinion, a good cloud offering that you create as a bundle that you're essentially guaranteed to be profitable, that you can do again and again and again and again, I think it will serve you well for the next 5 years. So I'm not kidding when I say the Cloud 5-pack. So I'm also putting together the material for my new roadshow. And I talk a lot about, we're entering an era of what I call the exponential century. We are 18 years in, and I think that we will see as much change in the next 5 years as we saw in the first 18 years. And I think it will just continue doubling. You know, the things like Google announcing that you can now log into their system and have access to their tensor processing unit gives you teraflops more processing capacity than you've ever had before in your life, and it's $6.50 a month. You know, I mean, what we're going to see changing going forward is mind-boggling. It is going to be so dramatic you can't conceive of it. And so we have to do more than just sit here and exist for the next 5 years and hope we don't get trampled. I personally believe you have to figure out what your role is in the economy that we're about to hit, because it's coming much faster than everybody believes. You know, next year you'll be able to buy a driverless car, and the year after that you'll be able to choose between several brands, and the year after that everyone will have it. I mean, it's coming whether you like it or not, and shaking your head and saying, no, that won't happen in my county. It will, and it is. And, you know, so that's why, as everybody was waiting to get on, there's a quote here. Those who approach the future with excitement are playing offense and positioning themselves for opportunity. Those who approach the future with fear are playing defense and worrying that the new business models will displace them. Many, many people will be displaced. And this is no bullshit. I believe that we will have social unrest, not just in the United States, but in every industrialized country, as more and more entire industries disappear, and we have to figure out how those people make enough money to eat and live and survive. If you're on this call, I assure you, if you go to willowrobotreplacemyjob.com, you're not going to get replaced. But that doesn't mean that you're going to thrive. You might survive. And I think you have to have a strategy to thrive. And I think that we can help each other figure out what that is.
So, Carl, I'm going to back up what Ken said. I agree that there's that, like he said it, and I was like, you know, that's kind of like, never occurred to me because I didn't ponder it, but I think it's absolutely right that thing is, there's something missing that tied the community together that caused it to do that. Because, like, you know, I know Harry Brailsford's off doing other things, but his community that he had built seemed like it was part of the momentum was, and a lot of his group was the small business server type community. And that, like, you know, those two kind of rose and fell together in a sense. You know, not that it's gone. I know he's off doing other things, but to this that energy. And I think it's a question I want to take away from this and continue to ask is what thing could be the common thing for this community, whatever it is. You know, I mean, you point to the Cloud 5 Pack. I would point to the fact that HP is selling a product called ClearOS, which is a complete small business solution in a box and that's what I said in 2010 when we did when they announced, the end of demise of small business server. I said ClearOS is the product of the future. At Spice World, HP had a 45 by 45 foot booth with a huge cross structure and like 15 people there to sell ClearOS on their HP servers. They're buying deep into that solution because it literally fills a need. But I don't think what we should be hoarding around for a fire is a particular product. I think it needs to be an idea and a concept that's about small business and the kind of small business that we think this community represents. And that's all I know for sure. But,
well, what's funny is, and you know, I'm the biggest HP supporter on earth. I think HP doesn't have any choice but to sell hardware because HP sells hardware. So I don't know their vision of the future is our vision of the future. You know what I mean? I think all the people who haven't yet committed to the cloud are fooling themselves. That building servers is literally the past, and they just haven't realized it. And
HP is just supporting them in that and giving them an option. Really, that's all they're doing.
Right. And like I said, big HP supporter, but you know, anyway, that's just my opinion. So Any other comments or suggestions?
Carl,
I think, hi, I've never spoken up before, but allow me.
Mario,
I think
yes.
Yes, I think the product or the service that's going to dictate how things move in the next few years is whatever you want to call it, desktop or workstation as a service. And I think virtually every business is going to jump on the idea. It's going to take a while, but they jump on the idea when you tell them they pay you a flat fee and you deliver a desktop experience on any device anywhere. Because connectivity and high-speed internet is no more an issue. We were always worried about bandwidth before and access, but now access is ubiquitous. I somehow think, I mean, I could be completely wrong, and if I am, so what? I think that's the way we're all going to come together. It's going to be these big folks like Google or Apple or Amazon that are going to deliver these desktops, and we will provide the support.
Well, I've been waiting for desktop as a service to be fast and reliable and reasonably priced for about 10 years. So if it comes, and I think it will, I think you're right that, you know, there was just an announcement Microsoft is going to bring high-speed bandwidth to, I don't know, tens of thousands of people in Michigan who are in rural areas and millions of people nationwide. And I think we're going to see more and more stuff like that because all these providers have it in their interest for all of us to have unlimited bandwidth. So I think you're right, but we also need to have a product that is a reasonable price where, you know, because right now you can go to Staples and for $500 you can get an awesome laptop. May not be a business grade Lenovo, but it'll be a great laptop that'll last 3 years. And it's hard for people to pay $100 a month to replace that.
I'm certainly going to say that universal bandwidth is not here. That's not even close.
It's not here. Oh no, but it's on its way.
Sure, I think within 3 to 5 years it'll be right here in New Mexico.
So. Well, you know, there's a little town in Alaska that just got fiber. I don't know if you saw this story. They're taking the fiber because of the melting ice caps. They could drop fiber over the North Pole and connect London up to Tokyo for the stock markets. Well, where they come ashore in Alaska, people are getting 200 gigabit fiber for under $50 a month. Now, that's one spot on Earth, but that's pretty cool. Right. And it will change the nature of that town. Right. So, you know, but we're going to see more stuff like that. And again, I think lots of people have it in their interest that we all have great connectivity all the time.
Well, I think it'll be the new center of the Nigerian scam.
Carl, George again.
Yes, sir.
I was willing to bet that we were going to have Windows 365 before we had Microsoft 365, but obviously Microsoft fooled me and decided to jump straight to that. But I suggest that may be one unifying theme, how to survive, how to make use, how to leverage Microsoft 365 to survive, maybe one unifying theme you could embrace on this forum.
Right.
And I agree with the comments about bandwidth. A lot of this is driven by the availability of less expensive, higher capacity bandwidth, which I'm finally enjoying. And I agree with you also that a viable virtual desktop product is another topic that is one thing standing in the way, something that performs as well as people expect it to.
Right. Well, you could Google this and find the story, but I love the story of Ray Kurzweil talking about the Human Genome Project, right? When I talk about exponential thinking, right? When he heard that after 7 years, 1997, that the Human Genome Project was 1% done, he said, oh, we're almost there, right? Because after 7 years to get to 1%, then you just double it to 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. And by the end of the 6th year, you'll be at 100%. And it was correct. I mean, that by 2013, it was done, or by 2003, it was done. So that kind of exponential growth is going to happen. One of the things that we have a problem with right now is that Bitcoin and these cryptocurrencies are taking up more electricity to produce the interactions on the blockchain than 8 or 9 countries in the world. So how do you see an answer to that? Well, solar capacity worldwide is growing at 25%, and electrical need is only growing at 2%. So it's going to easily be the case very soon that we will have universal solar power in the world, right? So that solves a lot of problems. So this is what I'm talking about, that we're at this point where so much stuff is going to change so fast that universal high capacity internet is literally just going to happen, right? When you think about exponents, think about something that doubles all the time. I mean, it's scary how much it's going to change. So
I think the real creator of Bitcoin was the electric companies.
that may be. Or, some genius in Puerto Rico, because you hear about all these Bitcoin billionaires are moving to Puerto Rico to create their own paradise. So, because basically the island was destroyed, so they're going to move in, buy 200 acres of land and build a city from the ground up where everything is exchanged in Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. So, who knows what the world's going to look like in 5 years, but it's not going to look like it does today. I'll tell you that.
Looping.
Mark?
Yeah, if I may, part of what you're talking about, I think, is what's making it difficult for communities to coalesce, because we've got so much change happening at every layer of the stack and so many options that, I get the idea, what Manuel said, we can't really, rally around a product anymore. We got to rally around a concept. But that's a little bit abstract. It's kind of like, it's no longer, we got these 3 different firewall options, and, are you using SonicWall or WatchGuard? Okay, well, the SonicWall guys will kind of be in this camp, and the WatchGuard guys in that camp. We get so many options, so many different products. One's emerging next week to disrupt the one that came out the week before, and this is only going to accelerate in the cloud. So, on the one hand, we can sit here and we can say, well, the writing's on the wall, you will be assimilated, everything's going to look different. On the other hand, it's really hard to put definition around that, because as it starts to look this way, another disruptive technology comes along. And in the midst of all of this, some of us are trying to slow it down and say, hey, wait a minute, what about security? Where's the data live? What do we know about who owns it? And hey, maybe let's take a step back from what appears to be massive digital slavery. So, all of that is kind of pouring into what do we rally around?
Well, that's true. I will say, I think that this, I don't know, it's almost a nervousness about constant change is one of the things that's going to continue to grow and accelerate. And we're going to have to figure out how we deal with that, and that's why I want to start having this discussion, because I don't know what the answer is. I am not remotely pretending to know any answers. I just know that companies as a rule respond to dramatic changes by withdrawing into what they currently make money at, right? Kodak, retreated away from digital because they made so much money with film. And so they milked every last frame of film out of the system until it was gone. And then they turned to digital and found out that they had lost the entire market. That's a very common thing that businesses tend to do. And we have to make sure that doesn't happen to us. So again, I don't know what the answer is, but I do think that we have to figure out how do we live in and embrace a world of change. And again, in some ways, I think being technical, we have an advantage over the rest of the world because we at least understand what's going on.
Yeah, well, so to kind of expand on that, the question is, how do we build a business model that can handle that? Because it's one thing to say our current business model doesn't work, so we're going to pivot to a new one.
But we don't know what it is.
Right, but the issue, it's like if you take, operating systems. I came out of enterprise. It's like we don't go to a new operating system every year. We try to get 3 to 5 years out of this thing. Well, now we're on a track where Microsoft's upgrading the operating system every 6 months, and they're doing disruptive things when they do that. And so it's like we're constantly retooling, constantly playing catch up. When you got that happening at every layer of the stack, how do you build a business model that can pivot that fast all the time and stay profitable at every pivot? It seems impossible.
Well, what's interesting, it kind of goes back to what Mario was saying, that, even for me, remember, I don't know if you saw this, but I was in Australia and my laptop got water spilled on it and whatever. Almost everything that I have, in fact, all of the important data that I have is in the cloud. So that's all cool. All I needed to do was get access to it so I could get to the cloud. But, there's still this desktop environment that was not the same as mine. And if I could just, buy some little tablet widget and click it up to my desktop in the cloud, it would be mine. It would be the same no matter what, even if I, lost 2 laptops in Australia. So, I really think there's a lot of that kind of stuff that we could.
And I'll tell you why I feel that way, because in my head, and I'm willing to share it with all of you, the plan I have is I don't like going into bed with Google, but what choice do we have? Inexpensive Chromebooks, which are replaceable in case, let's say, Carl, you're traveling someplace, you broke your Chromebook, you just walk into a Best Buy, and I get you on Google's Chrome management license, which is $50 a year. I set up your new Chromebook, and you access the desktop that you're familiar with. I think the hurdle is the price that this remote desktop that we're going to sell is going to come down to. The clients are already, we've dragged them kicking and screaming into an Adobe subscription, kicking and screaming into a Microsoft subscription. Right. And they can moan and, sorry to use the B word, BITCH, all they want, but they're in. They're sucked in, and they realize that this is the new way of doing business. That's why it's not an ego thing. I don't have to be right. Somehow I feel instinctively that this is where we're headed, and this is where we're all going to make money.
I hope so.
We won't make lots. We won't make lots.
I really think Mario's right on this as at least a high potential place to go. But the hurdle really is the cost. If you look at, if you're housing an RDS server in the cloud and you look at what you got to pay for bandwidth and memory and storage and everything else to make that RDS perform well, and then you add on top of that the Microsoft licensing or perhaps Citrix licensing, it just gets staggeringly expensive. And then we want to make a nice healthy margin on top of that. And you're gonna go sell this to 15-seat MSP customers.
Yeah, it's so funny, the difference between like people with expectations and down here and people with expectations up here. Some of you use Wild Apricot for your IT pro user groups. And I looked at that, and we've been using it in Sacramento for many years, but it has a 2 gigabyte storage limit. 2 gigabytes. So I just went to a conference and I got this little USB key. It's 2 gigabytes, right? So, and I sent him an email. I'm like, this is bizarre to me, right? I can go and pay 11 cents a gig at Microsoft or Amazon, but you are going to limit me to 2 gigs, on this entire site. It's just bizarre. And they said, there's nothing we can do. We can't even sell you a bigger package, right? So I think companies who think that way will be trampled. The future will leave them in the dust so fast, they won't know what hit them. So, what's interesting is you guys were talking, I was thinking about maybe the answer is, in terms of desktops as a service, somebody, maybe Amazon, if they're listening, can say, you know, I need all these people to have a desktop so that they can buy more of my products. And so I'll provide that to everybody for free as long as they are an Amazon subscriber.
Like they did with the phones, the subsidized phones?
Yeah. So, I mean, the iPhone's not very subsidized anymore, but, you know, it basically started out and now Android has joined it as a tool for buying things. That's all it is. I mean, I love my Kindle. I love my iPad, but the Kindle and the iPad are devices used for buying things. That's all they are. So.
I keep looping back to the community idea.
It's Matt, yeah.
Oh, okay. It wasn't shown on the screen. Anyway, I keep looping back to the community idea and what we've got going on with Tech Wizards. If you go into any of our meetings, every single person, other than the fact we're serving a small business of some sort, and small business is literally defined from one employee. I think probably our largest two that we've seen spoken so far have over 100 employees, just guessing. It's, you know, we all have very different business models. I think what joins us is most of our tech discussion, depending on how things go in the year, at least 60% of what we cover is technology. But really the biggest thing that binds us together, especially even after the loss of SBS, was the fact we just decided we're going to be a community, period. And I think that's what kept us going, is we just decided we wanted to do it, because we've all seen a lot of groups that have just disappeared over the last 5-10 years. We've kept going. You, Harry, a few other people mention us and keep it going. But I think a lot of what kept our community going, our little community here, that actually at one point was technically international, we just wanted to keep a community. And we do that a little bit by talking about technology, keeping that focus. We talk about different business models, but it's real interesting. We talk about a business model. We had one member last week, he was talking, I guess 2 weeks ago was our meeting. He was talking about patching concerns and things like that from his one-man shop perspective. His MSP model amounts to basically monitoring and letting his clients know when they have a problem. On the other scale of things, we have somebody who's complete MSP, has almost total Stasi-like control over his clients' machines, and they were it was almost as if they were talking cross languages with, or different languages with their concerns, but yet we're there every month for the discussion on the tech and the community. I think if you want to build something like that, that may be a direction we need to look at and go, rather than trying to say we're small business or we're MSP or something like that. Because once you start trying to define things based on the individual business model, I think you exclude ideas in groups.
That's true. Yeah, I think that we're definitely, whether we intended to be here or not, we're in an era where we all have very different business models. And it used to be, as Ken said, it used to be we all basically had the same business model.
Yep.
But now, you know, there are people that all they do is one thing, or have one really powerful niche. But most of the rest of us, we're all over the map. So, so I'm really grateful to everybody who's still here. It's 2:05 on my coast. So I do want to kind of finish this up, but I also want to find out if there's anybody else who's been like on the verge of raising your hand but hasn't spoken up yet. If you know, anybody else has anything else they want to throw in here, I would be very happy to hear it.
Carl, this is Ken again. One follow-up to kind of circle back a little bit to some things, validating some things that Joshua shared and Manuel shared, and kind of tying in a little bit of what we heard from Mark and Matt recently. Going back to that common thread, I think it was, while SBS was the product at the product level, I really don't think that itself was the common thread. I think it was underlying the technical was the underlying thread. The MVPs were engaged with us on a technical level, not a business or a sales level, not a product level, so to speak. And having that common thread, most of us came into this as propeller heads first. And what we've seen basically is that whole technical side of our community has almost disappeared entirely. And that's, I think, one of the things that is definitely missing in terms of drawing us together.
That's interesting. I guess what's funny is from my perspective, when I started blogging and so forth, I literally made the conscious decision that technical knowledge is everywhere and there's no shortage of it. So there's not a hole that I can fill. And then I realized that the business side of the business there was hardly any advice along those lines. And so I decided that will be the hole that I will try to fill. So it's
and you've done very well at, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you. But what's funny is I think you're right that so much of that technical knowledge is almost universally available for free on websites, and vendors have 1 billion training videos, and there's YouTube videos and all kinds of other stuff. And so I think, but it's all decentralized. There's 1,000 points of communication, not one place where people can go. All right. Final thoughts from anybody? Go ahead.
Having information available doesn't necessarily mean that people know how to use it. There's all sorts of medical sites that I could research anything, but that doesn't qualify me to be a brain surgeon. Whereas a lot of technical information out there, and there's a thin veneer of people who understand things. But just being able to Google something or find an article doesn't actually mean you've got knowledge or know how to process it.
Right.
Amen. There are a lot of crappy YouTube videos that don't do a job of translating the information into understandable
It doesn't
terms.
hurt to leave a UPS here, I guess.
Right. So I didn't put my email on here, but my email is carlp@smallbizthoughts.com. So if anybody has any more feedback, I'd be happy to take that. Yes, Dave.
Just a really quick thought on Ken's comment on the MVPs. I am a Microsoft MVP, and I'll share with you that the MVP community itself is still vibrant, meaning there's still over 2,000 MVPs. What my interesting question would be is, where did you used to engage the MVPs that maybe they're not at anymore, to see where that connect might have gone away, and because the MVPs are still there and you're still there, it's the connection between the two that seems to be not there.
The convergence point of where they showed up, Dave.
But where was the convergence before that you felt like you had to connect with them?
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what's missing. Carl, I had one last note I wanted to throw out there. Somebody had mentioned, that when I say not to rally around a product, I still feel very strongly about that, because products will change, and regardless of what anybody thinks is going on in the world, the difference between what we use for a brand name of operating system or a word processor is all it's all blending together because of the way that web apps are being developed today. And I'd still stay away from a product. But maybe the concept, what I want to throw out there is the concept that what is common for all of us is not just our skill set or service delivery, but very specifically that we all need to kind of redefine what IT service management really is, because it's broader now when we include the Internet of Things and all of how easy it is to be, to have a voice solution and all these other things, that maybe, what ties us together, the commonality at the most basic level, is that we're all IT service providers. But we also have to kind of broaden our view of what IT means and how it's going to, because then it's about how we deliver IT services to the customer, regardless of the platform, regardless of, web-based or physical, regardless of the product. That's how we're all going to stay in business too, is being able to make that shift. So just throwing that out there as food for thought.
Alrighty. So in closing, is coming to an end here. I just want to ask, was this worth doing? Should we do it again? More structure, less structure?
Yeah, I say go.
Thank you.
Very worth it.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, and I like Manuel's last idea there. I agree 100%.
All right.
I'm on board too, Carl.
Okay.
I enjoyed it. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you very much.
all.
Thank you.
All righty. I'm going to put this to an end, and I'll see where and when I can post a recording. So, all righty. Thank you all.